Welcome to bedtime stories to calm you and restore your soul, to give the restful sleep you need. It's time to find a comfortable place to relax. Lie back, close your eyes, and take a few deep, cleansing breaths. Prepare yourself to embark on a magical journey of relaxation and soul restoration. Let the peaceful story guide you to a place of inner calm and renewal. This is a fanciful tale about Rosa's adventure. 10-year-old Rosa was sweeping the front porch of her home, especially the leaves that had gathered beneath the porch swing where Mama and Papa liked to sit in the evenings. Their small, white-wooded house, built in the 1910s, had a charming front porch. The wood siding, slightly weathered but well-maintained, gave the house a nostalgic charm. A wooden porch swing hung by the front door, swaying gently in the breeze. Surrounding the house were thick woods, with tall trees whose leaves rustled like whispers whenever the wind blew. When Rosa finished her chore, she pushed open the creaky wooden screen door and stepped into the cozy kitchen where her mother stood at the sink, washing dishes. The smell of fresh cornbread filled the air. "Mama, I'm done sweeping the porch. Can I go down to the creek?" Rosa asked, her eyes bright with anticipation. "May I go down to the creek?" her mother corrected gently, turning around to smile at her daughter. Rosa rolled her eyes playfully. "May I go down to the creek?" she repeated. Her mama laughed softly. "Yes, you may, but don't get wet or dirty." "I won't," Rosa promised, already halfway out the screen door. She skipped down the narrow path that led from the house to the creek, her feet barely touching the ground. The trees on either side of the path were tall and shady, their branches creating a cool, green canopy overhead. Birds chirped in the trees, and the air was thick with the sound of crickets. The creek itself was crystal clear, its water running smoothly over rounded stones, creating a peaceful, bubbling melody. The banks were lined with wildflowers and moss, and dragonflies flitted just above the surface of the water. Rosa loved watching the minnows dart in the shallow pools, while insects skittered across the water. She felt at peace in the dappled sunlight that flickered through the leaves. Nearby, she spotted a cluster of light purple daisies with bright yellow centers. She walked over, picked one, and then sat down by her favorite tree, its thick roots curling around the soft earth. Leaning against the tree, Rosa began to play a familiar game, pulling one petal off the daisy at a time, whispering, he loves me not, he loves me." She was lost in her game when she noticed a pair of red tennis shoes standing nearby. Rosa looked up and saw a young woman wearing a white cotton dress that fell just past her knees. The woman had short, dark hair and skin as rich and dark as polished ebony. The sunlight behind her made her look as though she were glowing. Rosa blinked in awe. "Are you an angel or a fairy?" she asked. The woman smiled warmly. "Something like that. My name is Miss Betty." "What's yours?" she asked. "I'm Rosa," she replied. "Well, Rosa, would you like to go on an adventure with me?" Miss Betty asked, her voice soft and inviting. Rosa hesitated. Mama always said not to go anywhere with strangers, but this wasn't just any stranger. Miss Betty was something magical, an angel or fairy, maybe both. So it had to be okay, right? Rosa stood up and took Miss Betty's hand. Together they walked down a narrow path. At the end of the path were stairs leading downward. They descended the stairs, nearly 20 flights, until they reached a sidewalk. When they reached the bottom, Rosa gasped. Before them lay a small modern town. The buildings were sleek and no more than 3 stories tall, made of glass and steel. Modern cars lined the streets, and people walked by wearing bright, stylish clothing. So different from the simple dresses and suits Rosa was used to seeing back home. "What's the name of this town?" Rosa asked, wide-eyed. "I've never been here before." "It's called Futurity," Miss Betty answered with a smile. Rosa looked around in amazement. This town was nothing like the downtown she knew. The streets were bustling with people of all different races, black, white, Asian, and others she didn't recognize. They all walked together, some chatting and laughing as if it were the most natural thing in the world. As they strolled along, Miss Betty turned to Rosa. "Would you like some ice cream?" "Oh yes," Rosa exclaimed, her face lighting up. "I love ice cream." "Great. I know the best shop in town. But we'll have to catch the bus. It's a few blocks away," Miss Betty said. When they reached the bus stop, there was a bench covered by a canopy, and a few people were already waiting. What surprised Rosa was how the white and black people sat together, some of them even chatting. As they stepped onto the bus, Miss Betty said, "Let's sit up front." Rosa hesitated. "Mama wouldn't want me to. We're supposed to sit in the back behind the red line." Miss Betty chuckled. "Not on this bus, sweetie. This is a special one." Rosa shrugged. "Okay." After they got their ice cream, Miss Betty with a chocolate cone, and Rosa with a banana split, they sat in a booth by the window. Rosa watched the people walking by, noticing their different clothes and colors. "I was wondering, Miss Betty," Rosa began, "why are there so many different kinds of people here? All different colors, wearing all kinds of clothes?" Miss Betty smiled. "Let's go to the library and find out." They walked a short distance to a grand library with 2 levels and a wide, open atrium filled with natural light. Miss Betty approached the woman at the counter, a young lady with long red hair and green eyes. After a short conversation, they made their way up a large curved staircase to the 2nd floor, where Miss Betty found a book she was looking for. It was a large, beautiful leather-bound book, embossed with a map of the world. At a nearby table, Miss Betty opened the book to a page with a map labeled Skin Color Map. She read softly aloud, "Humanity is remarkable in its diversity. Though we are one species, our physical traits vary greatly across different regions of the world." The image above illustrates this by showing the range of skin colors found globally. It highlights how people living closer to the Earth's equator tend to have darker skin, while those in more northern or southern regions generally have lighter skin. This variation is due to exposure to ultraviolet (UV) rays from the sun. Populations closer to the equator have evolved darker skin as a natural protection against the sun's stronger UV rays. Conversely, those living farther from the equator, where UV exposure is less intense, have lighter skin, as they require less protection. Miss Betty pointed out to Rosa where the equator is on the map. Rosa had seen the map of the world in her classroom. Then, Miss Betty explained to Rosa about the ultraviolet rays from the sun can damage your skin and how dark skin helps prevent that. Miss Betty also said that over millions of years, our skin colors have changed. As people began move out of Africa between 20,000 and 50,000 years ago, and as people moved to the northern part of the world, this led to lighter skin colors. Rosa listened, amazed. "Wow, that's a lot to learn." Miss Betty smiled. "It is, but one day when you're older, you'll understand more. Today is just the beginning." Miss Betty paused, listening. "I hear your mama calling you," she said gently. Rosa blinked, and suddenly she was back under her favorite tree by the creek. Miss Betty was gone. "Rosa, it's time to come in now," Mama called from the house. Rosa jumped up and ran back up the path. "I'm coming, Mama," she shouted. She burst through the screen door, finding Mama in the kitchen, preparing dinner. "Mama, I just had the craziest dream," Rosa said, her face flushed with excitement. "You can tell me all about it later, sweetheart. Right now, set the table for supper," Mama replied, smiling. "Yes, ma'am," Rosa said, still grinning as she grabbed the dishes, her mind swirling with thoughts of Miss Betty and the magical town of futurity. The more we learn about nature and the world around us, the more we'll realize how deeply connected we all are. Even a single act of kindness or a small effort to make a difference can soothe and calm our spirit, bringing a sense of peace and fulfillment.